numbers of West African citizens are seeking refuge in our country. This has required a review of our security expenditures within the limited fiscal space. Mr. Speaker, this 2023 mid-year fiscal policy review will therefore provide an update on economic performance for the first half year of 2023 and outlook for the rest of the year. Provide an update on the implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEG, including update on structural reforms and the progress towards achieving the quantitative performance criteria and indicative targets. Provide an update on the debt restructuring program, present a revised 2023 fiscal framework which aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEG, and outline government's growth strategy to drive the recovery process. I will now proceed to update the House on the macro-fiscal performance of the economy since 2022. Mr. Speaker, as we usually do, the 2023 budget was presented in November 2022 using end September 2022 data. We now have end December 2022 data, which indicates that overall real GDP growth was 3.1% compared to the revised target of 3.7%. Non-oil real GDP growth was 3.8% compared to the revised target of 4.3%. End December inflation rates of 54.1% compared to the projected 28.5%. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.7 billion, 15.8% of GDP, compared to the revised target of 96.84 billion, 16.4% of GDP. Total expenditure on commitment basis amounted to 165.1 billion Ghana cedis, 27% of GDP, against a revised target of 133.8 billion, 22.6% of GDP. Overall budget deficit on commitment basis was 11.8% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.3% of GDP. Primary balance on commitment basis was a deficit of 4.3% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 0.7% of GDP. On cash basis, the overall budget deficit was 10.7% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.6% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance on cash basis was a deficit of 3.2% of GDP, against a revised target of a surplus of 0.4% of GDP. And gross international reserves was equivalent to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, with approval of Parliament, government set out to achieve the following key macroeconomic targets for 2023. Overall real GDP growth of 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of 3%, end December inflation rate of 18.9%, overall budget deficit of 5.9% of GDP on commitment basis, and 7.7% on cash basis. Primary balance commitment basis of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP, and a deficit of 1.1% of GDP on cash basis, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3.3 months of imports. As I've indicated, we have made significant progress on restoring macroeconomic stability, and the narrative is changing. The economy is showing signs of recovery, the exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since December 2022. Mr. Speaker, these outturns are the results of focused implementation of all the measures we presented in the 2023 budget and the positive sentiments arising from the progress of the IMF program, which I will now discuss. Mr. Speaker, towards addressing the macro-fiscal challenges the economy faced in 2022, government engaged the IMF to support the implementation of our PCPEG program. On 17th May 2023, the Executive Board of the IMF approved a 36-month extended credit facility in an amount equivalent to SDR's $2.242 billion, approximately $3 billion. The program is anchored on government PCPEG and designed to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. It includes extensive reforms to strengthen resilience and lay the foundation for stronger and more inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, the program has been designed to address the key issues facing the economy through the following key priority targeted interventions. Large and front-loaded fiscal consolidation to bring public finances back on a sustainable path. The program envisages a cumulative fiscal adjustment of 5.1 percentage points of GDP over the program period 2023 to 2026, over a fiscal effort of 3.8 percentage points in 2023 alone. The primary deficit on commitment basis will be reduced from 4.3% of GDP in 2022 to 0.5% in 2023. The fiscal consolidation will be executed by both mobilizing more domestic revenue and improving efficiency of spending. 2, to protect the vulnerable through enhancement of existing social protection programs, including the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty (LEAP), National Health Insurance Scheme, the Capitation Grant, and the School Feeding Program. The 2023 budget, for example, doubled the benefits under the LEAP program as well as boosted the allocations to the School Feeding Program. 3, strong and ambitious structural reforms in tax policy, revenue administration, public financial management, financial sector, as well as strong measures to enhance revenue mobilization and address weaknesses in the energy and cocoa sectors. Both are critical to bring public finances back on sustainable path while creating fiscal space for critical development spending. 4, to bring inflation under control through prudent monetary policy, including appropriate monetary policy tightening and the elimination of monetary financing of the budget. Containing inflation pressures requires coordination between fiscal and monetary policies. 5, to rebuild international reserve buffers to 3 months of import by the end of the program. The Bank of Ghana is pursuing enhanced flexible exchange rate policies to help rebuild international reserves. 6, to restore sustainability and preserve financial stability following the domestic debt exchange program to support private investments and growth. And 7, to pursue reforms to encourage private investments, strengthen growth, and create more jobs. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive to note that our path towards securing an approved IMF-supported program has been characterized by speed and resoluteness. More specifically, the following key and significant milestones were accomplished. We achieved staff-level agreement in December 2022, 6 months after we formally requested for the IMF support to back our PCPEG. We're supported by China's agreement to co-chair Ghana's Paris Club Official Creditor Committee. We secured financing assurances for the Official Credit Committee, co-chaired by China and France on 12 May 2023, 5 months after our formal request in December 2022. We secured an IMF board approval on 17 May 2023, 5 months after the SLA and 10 months after a formal request for a fund program. We also secured IMF financing equivalent to 3 times Ghana's quota. We front-loaded disbursement of IMF resources with 40% in 2023 and the rest to be spread between 2024 and 2026, and successfully concluded a domestic exchange program. The results are clear. We are witnessing the catalytic impact of crowding in other resources. We are in discussions with the World Bank for a $900 million development policy operation and emergency support. The United States, through the International Development Finance Corporation, has announced a program to invest $300 million towards the construction of a data center under the G7 Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investments. This is through the Development Finance Corporation of the U.S. Mr. Speaker, several key stakeholders play diverse roles in Ghana's successful journey towards approval of the IMF-supported program. On behalf of His Excellency the President, I would like to again express our sincere gratitude to the Right Honourable Speaker, members of Parliament, our participating bondholders, retirees, financial institutions, and other stakeholders who played critical roles. Permit me to express our sincere gratitude to the Managing Director of the IMF, a team led by its Country Director, Stefan Roder, and the Executive Board for providing the unfathomable cooperation throughout the whole process. We are also grateful to the World Bank Group, the U.S. Treasury, U.S. Development Finance Corporation. Government appreciates our other development partners, both multilaterals like AFDB and Ofori-Atta, and bilaterals for their support under the program. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we must and will prevail. Indeed, our only recourse is to be successful at the upcoming first review of the program in September 2023 and all other subsequent reviews. We are therefore respectfully calling on every member of this august House and all our fellow Ghanaians to support these reforms. Mr. Speaker, to support the effective implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEG, the government has put in place an implementation strategy. Status of progress towards achieving the program objectives. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported program will be monitored and reviewed semi-annually based on agreed targets to be met by end June and end December each year. We will prepare for a comprehensive assessment of the targets by the IMF during the first review in September 2023, which will assess 9 structural benchmarks, 6 quantitative performance criteria, and 3 indicative targets in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported PCPEG has also prioritized social protection reforms to ensure that the vulnerable are protected from the impact of the ongoing fiscal adjustment. Social spending on health, social protection, and education will be closely monitored to ensure timely disbursement of funds to beneficiaries. In addition, an indexation mechanism for benefits under the LEAP program will be put in place by end September 2023. Furthermore, the coverage of LEAP will be expanded and its targeting improved to cover the extreme poor by 2024. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet also approved a turnaround strategy for Cocoa Board as part of measures to improve financial viability of the institution and to position it to deliver increased value for the people of Ghana. I take this opportunity to assure all our key stakeholders of government's commitment to the unwavering implementation of our very own PCPEG, which undergirds the IMF-approved program. Debt operations. Mr. Speaker, we announced in the 2023 budget statement that we will embark on a debt restructuring program to alleviate fiscal pressures by 1, reducing debt servicing costs, 2, improving debt sustainability, and 3, ensuring macroeconomic stability and economic growth. The restructuring is critical to the implementation of the program. To ensure a return to the path of debt sustainability, a comprehensive debt strategy centered on a restructuring program was pursued. Mr. Speaker, the perimeter for the restructuring includes both domestic, central government and debt, and some parastatals and external. The main aim of the operations is to reduce debt servicing costs and restore our debt sustainability. The debt operation focuses on achieving by 2028 the present value of overall debt and external debt to GDP to below 55% and 40% thresholds respectively, and 2, external debt service to revenue and exports to revenue below the 18% and 15% thresholds respectively. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic debt exchange program, on 5th December 2022, government launched the DDEP in a transparent manner while seeking to minimize its impact on bondholders. After 3 months of negotiations with the different bondholder groups and amendments to the original terms, government successfully completed the DDEP on 14 February 2022. Total bonds outstanding at the settlement date amounted to 126.978 billion Ghana cedis, of which 29.286 billion were held by pension funds, bringing the total eligible bonds to 97.7 billion cedis. The ministry received final participation of 88.9 billion Ghana cedis, representing 84.9% of total eligible bonds. The DEDP has provided the government with increased fiscal flexibility and addressed cash and other liquidity constraints. Once again, we are grateful to all investors who participated in this exchange. Mr. Speaker, to complete the domestic debt operations, government announced in April 2023 its intention to further pursue the discussions around the following domestic debt instruments, which were excluded from the DDEP perimeter then: energy sector independent power producers, cocoa bills, local US dollar denominated bonds, and Bank of Ghana non-tradable debt. Out of these remaining debt instruments, government launched debt operations for the cocoa bills and local US denominated bonds on 14 July 2023. The settlement date is today, Mr. Speaker, 31st July 2023, and we look forward to a successful operation. Mr. Speaker, although pension funds were exempted from the main DDEP, we continue to engage them. Mr. Speaker, we are also engaging with the IPPs on debt relief and financing arrangements to achieve both debt sustainability for Ghana and financial sustainability for the energy sector. As part of the restructuring projects for external debt, government requested the treatment of the bilateral debt under the G20 Common Framework beyond the debt service suspension initiative. Government also held a series of engagements with its bilateral creditors via the Paris Club to provide financing assurances to support Ghana's IMF ECF request. The Official Creditor Committee for Bilateral Creditors was established and co-chaired by China and France. The committee provided financing assurances on 12 May, as I stated, to support the IMF's board approval of Ghana's IMF ECF request on 17 May 2023. Mr. Speaker, government has also begun the process of negotiating with its commercial creditors, our Eurobond investors. 2 bondholder groups have been formed comprising domestic and regional bondholders, as well as international bondholders. Government has already shared a set of data and scenarios to commence discussions. On the restructuring of Eurobonds, we expect to receive counter-offers from the bondholders in the short term and envisage an agreement by year-end. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector comprising commercial banks, special deposit-taking institutions, insurance sector, and fund managers participated significantly in the DDEP. The effects of the debt operation of the financial sector is elevated liquidity and solvency risks from impairment losses. Regulators, including the Bank of Ghana, provided temporary regulatory forbearance to mitigate the liquidity impact of the DDEP. Importantly, government is working with key partners to establish a Ghana Financial Stability Fund to provide liquidity and solvency support to the financial institutions. The eligibility criteria agreed with regulators and international partners will be published soon. Mr. Speaker, these macro-prudential interventions and operations were also to address the impact of the large external shocks within a wider global economic context, which I now proceed to discuss. Mr. Speaker, we are also mindful of the impact of the debt exchange program on individuals, and government is working hard to stabilize the economy towards a faster economic recovery to ameliorate impact on the welfare of individuals. Mr. Speaker, global developments. The global economy continues to struggle through a patchy recovery phase following the shocks, including those from the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. It is within such context that the IMF in its April 2023 World Economic Outlook update projects global output growth to decline significantly to 2.8% in 2023 from 3.4% in 2022 before rising slightly to 3% in 2024. The projected slowdown reflects synchronous policy tightening around the globe, especially in the United States, Euro areas, the United Kingdom, and China, to contain the surge in inflation and worsening financial conditions. Despite signs of modest growth in early 2023, persistent high inflation and the global financial market turmoil have proven too strong and dampened hopes of a robust recovery. Mr. Speaker, the price of crude oil declined by 15.7% between August 2022 and February 2023. This was due to a weakened demand, largely attributed to a huge decline in oil consumption in China. According to IMF's World Economic Outlook Update, July 2023, crude oil prices are projected to fall from an average of $96.4 a barrel to $73.1 a barrel in 2023. However, gold and cocoa prices have performed better than anticipated. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic front, global development severely impacted the domestic economy. The performance of key indicators in 2022 as follows. Overall, real GDP growth declined from 5.1% in 2021 to 3.1% in 2022. This was lower than the 3.5% projected for the year. Non-oil GDP growth declined over the period, recording a growth of 3.8% compared to 6.6% recorded in 2021. Headline inflation accelerated consecutively from 13.9% in January to 29.8% in June and to a peak of 54% in December 2022, following the sharp currency depreciation and surge in commodity prices. Interest rates broadly trended upwards across the spectrum of the yield curve, consistent with the tightening policy stance. The 91-day and 182-day Treasury bill rates increased to 35.48% and 36.23% respectively in December 2022, from 12.49% and 13.19% respectively in the same period 2021. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 30.0%, 21.2%, and 25.3% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively. This, compared with an appreciation of 3.5% against the euro and a depreciation of 4.1% and 3.1% against the US dollar and the pound, respectively, in 2021. And gross international reserves declined by $3.457 billion to $6.238 billion to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, on the fiscal front, there were several key developments in 2022. Government sought to, among others, strengthen its fiscal consolidation program, which commenced in 2021. The objective was to gradually return to the Fiscal Responsibility Act thresholds of a fiscal deficit of no more than 5% of GDP. The strategy included pursuing a strong revenue-led consolidation to complement expenditure rationalization measures. However, owing to the several factors, government fiscal policy suffered major setbacks from both external and domestic shocks. Mr. Speaker, before discussing the 2022 fiscal outturns, we would like to note that the fiscal anchor in the context of the IMF-supported PCPEC is the primary balance on commitment basis. To align with this requirement, government therefore had indicated in paragraph 210 of the 2023 budget statement that the fiscal accounts will henceforth be reported on commitment basis, thereby taking into account outstanding unpaid commitments of government. Mr. Speaker, the assessment on commitment basis promotes transparency, enables a real-time monitoring of government's fiscal performance, and provides a real-time review on the payables, thus helping to prevent while reducing the accumulation of arrears. This information is also essential for the public to get a comprehensive view of the bold fiscal policies to restore fiscal and debt sustainability in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, with this context, the provisional data on government's fiscal operations for 2022 indicate that 1. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.65 billion compared to the mid-year review target of 96.84 billion and the projected outturn of 98.08 billion. And on the other hand, total expenditures on commitment basis amounted to 165.06 billion Ghana cedis compared to the mid-year target of 133.84 billion and the projected outturn of 159.01 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the higher expenditure together with the lower revenue outturn resulted in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 72.19 billion, 11.8% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of 37 billion, 6.3% of GDP, and the projected outturn of 60.9 billion, 9.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the corresponding primary balance on commitment basis for the period was a deficit of 26.51 billion, 4.3% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of a deficit of 4.36 billion, 0.7% of GDP, and the projected outturn of a deficit of 16.92 billion, 2.7% of GDP. Petroleum revenue and utilization for 2022. Mr. Speaker, total petroleum receipts, proceeds from liftings and other petroleum receipts, as of December 2022, amounted to 1.43 billion. The amount comprises receipts from the 63rd to the 68th liftings from the Jubilee field, the 20th and 21st liftings from the 10 fields, and the 9th and 10th and 11th liftings from the Sankofa Jinyame field. In addition to the total receipts for the year under review, petroleum receipts that spilled over from 2021 to 2022 was $14.82 million, bringing the total amount distributed to $1.44 billion. This compares to the amount distributed of $808.6 million for the same period in 2021. A total of $581.5 million was transferred into the Ghana Petroleum Funds in 2022 compared to $227 million in 2021. Out of the amount transferred, the Ghana Heritage Fund received $174 million against $68 million in 2021, while the Ghana Stabilization Fund received $407.06 million compared to $159.24 million in 2021. The total amount transferred in 2022 from petroleum liftings and related proceeds to the annual budget was $526.31 million compared to $352.79 million in 2021. Mr. Speaker, on public debt developments, as at end December 2022, Ghana's central government debt and guaranteed debt in nominal terms stood provisionally at $435.3 billion, up from $351.8 billion at end 2021, representing an increase of 23.7%. Using the revised GDP released by the Ghana Statistical Services in April 2023, the debt to GDP ratio as at end 2022 stood at 71.3%. Mr. Speaker, the composition of the total debt stock was made up of provisional amount of $240.9 billion, equivalent to 39.5% of GDP, and $194.4 billion, equivalent to 31.8% of GDP, for external and domestic debt, respectively. Mr. Speaker, I now proceed to update the House on the performance of the economy since January 2023 and the reason why there's a consensus that we are indeed turning the corner. Available data indicates that overall first quarter growth for 2023 was 4.2%, up from 3% recorded for the same period in 2022. This growth Mr. Speaker, largely reflected an increase in the services sector, which recorded a growth of 10.1%. Headline inflation eased in the first half of 2023 from the peak of 54.1% in December 2022. Headline inflation gradually trended downwards from 53.6% in January 2023 to 42.5% in June 2023. The moderation in inflation was largely supported by monetary policy tightening, relative stability in the exchange rate, and lower and stable export petroleum prices. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 22.1% against the US dollar in the year to July 17, 2023, compared to 21.1% in the same period in 2022. The cedi, excluding the January 2023 depreciation of 20%, has depreciated by an impressive 1.8% between February and January 17, 2023. Total export receipts, Mr. Speaker, fell by 7.9% to $8.2 billion on the back of lower crude oil export receipts. Crude oil exports declined by 41.3% year-on-year due to a 21.4% decline in volumes and 25.3% fall in prices. Current account recorded a provisional surplus of $849 million compared with a deficit of $1.1 billion for the same period, 2022. And gross international reserves dropped from $6.2 billion at the end of December 2022 to $5.3 billion, 2.5 million in June 2023, reflecting BOGs reducing their foreign liabilities in line with the IMF program. Net international reserves received a boost from gold reserves and improved to $2.3 billion to 1.1 months of import cover compared to $1.4 billion or 0.6 months of import cover recorded at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, on banking developments and the outlook, the banking sector posted unexpected, relatively strong performance during the first half of the year. Despite the lingering effects of the DDEP, the banks have reported increased deposits and investments, higher profitability, and return on equity of over 35%. The impact of the DDEP, such as the increase in non-performing loans, was partly moderated by the timely introduction of temporary regulatory reliefs. In the outlook, the operationalization of the $750 million Ghana Financial Stability Fund and the planned recapitalization of banks would ensure stability as well as strengthen financial intermediation to support the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the provincial data on government fiscal operation for the first half of 2023 indicate: 1. A slower pace in expenditure execution relative to revenue shortfall, resulting in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 6.3 billion Ghana cedis, 0.8% of GDP, compared to the 2023 half-year budget deficit targets of 28.3 billion or 3.5% of GDP. A corresponding primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus, Mr. Speaker, of 8.8 billion Ghana cedis, 1.1% of GDP, compared to the target of a surplus of 310 million Ghana cedis. Overall cash deficit of 10.3 billion, 1.3% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year budget target of 35.4 billion, 4.4% of GDP, and a corresponding primary balance on cash basis of a surplus of 4.8 billion, 0.6% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year deficit target of 6.9 billion or 0.9% of GDP. We are back on track to a positive primary balance. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal balances are driven by total revenue and grants for the first half of 2021 billion, 8.4% below the target of 64.7 billion. Despite the shortfall, the outturn shows a nominal year-on-year growth of 41.8%. The key driver of revenue deviation is the lower than programmed oil receipts and total expenditure of 68.5 billion, 26.3% below the program expenditure of 92.9 billion. All other expenditure lines were contained within their respective targets for the period, except for compensation of employees and expenditure on goods and services. The higher than program compensation of employees outturn stems from higher payments for wage and salaries from the implementation of the 30% base pay increase for public sector workers, which was agreed to after the 2023 budget was presented and approved by this August House last year. We needed, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers. Mr. Speaker, government introduced several revenue measures to support the fiscal consolidation and growth agenda. The policy interventions were specifically targeted at growing the revenue base to yield an estimated 1.35% of GDP. The Ministry of Finance and GRA are working together to ensure the realization of the full yield in the near future through enhanced collection efforts, governance, and EVAT implementation. Mr. Speaker, arising from the DDEP, several structural changes have commenced in the reporting of Ghana's debt data. The debt from the special purpose vehicles, which previously was not part of the central government debt, has now been included. Furthermore, we'll be including the long-term debt of selected SOEs such as Cocoa Board and contingent liabilities arising from the IPPs, PPAs, and financial sector recapitalization. Mr. Speaker, the macroeconomic environment has changed significantly since the 2023 budget was presented to this House in November 2022. Mr. Speaker, although pressure still exists and there are formidable risks in the horizon, our economy is in a better position than it was 7 months ago, as the macroeconomic environment has seen relative stability since the beginning of the year. This is largely explained by factors including the positive sentiments following the staff-level agreement reached in December 2022, $3 billion IMF ECF program, the eventual passage of all fiscal measures in the 2023 budget by the House, and the completion of the DDEP program, and China's agreement to co-chair the OECD. I have also discussed the significant improvements in the key macroeconomic indicators, including inflation, exchange rate, interest rates, reserve position, growth rate, and the performance of the bank since 2022. Mr. Speaker, all these developments, together with the need to align with the targets of the IMF-supported PC-PEC program, warrant a division to the macroeconomic framework. This was necessary because the framework was guided by the September 2022 data that underpinned the 2023 budget in November 2022. The revisions to the macro-fiscal framework generally seek to align the 2023 mid-year fiscal review with the IMF ECF-supported PC-PEC program. Mr. Speaker, key revisions to the macro-fiscal target for 2023 year include: 1. Overall real GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 2.8%. Non-oil revenue GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 3%. End period headline inflation of 31.3% from 18.9%. Primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of GDP compared to a surplus of 0.7% of GDP, aligning with IMF-supported primary balances. Gross international reserves sufficient to cover at least 0.8 months of imports of goods and service by 2023. Mr. Speaker, revisions to GDP projections. The overall real GDP growth for 2023 has been revised to 1.5% from 2.8%, and non-oil real GDP growth has also been revised to 1.5% from 3%. The downward revision in projected growth for 2023 is an indication of a broad slowdown in the three sectors of the economy as a result of factors such as the fiscal consolidation plan and difficult global conditions. Mr. Speaker, overall GDP growth is, however, projected to rebound to 2.8%, 4.7%, and 4.9% in 2024, 25, and 26, respectively. This is a result of implementation of growth-oriented and structural transformation strategies in the PCPEC. We have, however, been charged in the PCPEC to develop an enhanced growth strategy supported by crowding in of private, domestic, and foreign investment to further boost growth. We are confident of a private sector outlook to boost growth and jobs. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 revised fiscal framework is now fully aligned with the IMF program fiscal objectives in terms of primary balance, cash and commitment, revenue path, and the trajectory of primary expenditures. The drivers of the revisions to 2023 fiscal framework includes fiscal developments for January to June 2023 reflecting shortfalls in revenues and lower spending, increase in base pay on single spine salary structure of 30% compared to the assumed 20% for the 2023 budget, partial restoration of cap transfers to the NHIS and GET fund, the impact of the completed DDEP on debt service costs as well as on revenue mobilization, IMF ECF program disbursement for 2023 of $1.2 billion and reflection of other catalytic financing, including the World Bank's US $530 million, a DPO of $300 million, and emergency projects of $233 million, and expected disbursement of $103 million from the AFDB. Revision in exchange rates, interest rates, crude oil prices, crude oil volumes, and GDP projections, and the need to align 2023 mid-year review to the approved IMF project-supported PCPEC. These realignments, Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 fiscal framework results in a revised primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of the revised GDP. This is an adjustment of 3.2% from the 3.5% of GDP, lower than the initial target of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP set in the 2023 budget. This aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEC fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, at the time of presenting the 2023 budget, benchmark revenue crude oil prices was $88.5 per barrel, was used to project petroleum revenue for 2023 in line with provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. As amended, recent global economic developments had led to a decreased demand for crude oil. Therefore, consistent with Section 7 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the average crude oil price has been revised to $74 per barrel, down from the price of $88.55 per barrel used in the 2023 budget. Accordingly, the total petroleum receipts have been revised downwards from $1.48 billion to $1.008 billion, representing a 32% decline. Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 budget, government outlined a series of measures to mitigate the impact of the severe economic challenges and also to preserve growth. These include the implementation of flagship programs such as the One District, One Factory, Planting for Food and Jobs, Phase 2, Strategic Anchor Industries, Infrastructure Poverty Eradication and Program, IPEP, Ghana Cares, U-Start, Agenda 111, among others. Mr. Speaker, within the context of our IMF-backed PCPEC, these interventions assume greater significance in promoting growth and medium-term fiscal consolidation. In addition, as stated earlier, we are pursuing a social protection agenda to mitigate the impact of adjustment on the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, in line with government's unwavering commitment to industrialization, the implementation of the flagship One District, One Factory initiative is on course. As of June 2023, 126 factories were operational nationwide. Over 160,000 direct and indirect jobs have been created, especially for the youth who have been mobilized to establish agro-processing factories in 58 districts. Mr. Speaker, government initiated the Agenda 111 infrastructure deficits in the health sector and improve healthcare outcomes in the country post-COVID-19. As at May 2023, total payments under the program stood at $189 million with 83 active projects on site in all 16 regions of the country. Mr. Speaker, Planting for Foods and Jobs has brought substantial improvements in Ghana's agriculture sector. This has resulted in increased food security, employment along agricultural value chains, and accessibility of raw materials for developing industries. The program has directly contributed to increased crop yields for major food staples such as maize, rice, and soya by 135%, 67%, and 18% respectively within the period. After a comprehensive review, government is finalizing PFJ Phase 2 to ensure a more efficient and targeted support for the agriculture sector. The key elements of Phase 2 are inputs credit systems, storage and distribution infrastructure, commodity trading, and digitized platforms. Mr. Speaker, I can also report that efforts towards promoting commercial agriculture, building technological capability, and advancing digitalization under the Ghana Cares program are on track. Last year, I indicated the government is spearheading the Economic Enclaves project to establish growth poles in key locations, including Kasunya, Greater Accra, Kumawu, Ashanti, and Banda in OT regions. The approach under the EEP is to provide agriculture infrastructure and land development support to entrepreneurial youth and the private sector. Mr. Speaker, to enhance production and value addition in the enclaves, the provision of ancillary services such as housing, training, facilities, irrigation, canals, farm roads, and electricity have also commenced. Mr. Speaker, it is gratifying to note that the domestic private sector has responded positively to the provision of these services. About 10 medium and large-scale entrepreneurs with experience in the commercial agriculture space have applied to play diverse roles, ranging from anchor farmers to machine and equipment services in the EEP site in Kasunya. Mr. Speaker, in partnership with the National Service Team, about 20,000 acres of land in Sechere Kumawu in the Ashanti region is being developed to accelerate maize, tomato, groundnuts, and animal production. Mr. Speaker, government expects that by end 2023, the DEP will have fully seeded some 7,500 acres of rice onboarded qualified private sector entrepreneurs as anchor farmers embarked on value chain activities such as rice milling and packaging in Kasunya, and developed and seeded 1,500 acres of lands in Kumawu and Banda, respectively, and also engaged private sector partners in these enclaves. With these efforts, Mr. Speaker, we expect to gradually drive down the food component of inflation, create jobs for our youth, improve food security, and reduce the volatility of the forest market. Mr. Speaker, to equip participants with entrepreneurial skills, investment readiness tools, as well as coaching and mentoring services under the USA initiative, 26,626 persons nationwide have received business advisory support services since its launch last year. We'll continue to work with participating financial institutions, National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Program, and Ghana Enterprises Agency to provide soft loans and managerial skills for the setting up of youth-led enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program with support from the Ghana Economic Transformation Project launched the HUBS Acceleration Grant Program in April of this year. The program has supported 30 business and innovation hubs with grants to resource startups in communities nationwide. Each hub has received up to US $180,000 and is required to resource 20 startups. In the second half of the year, 50 new startups will be supported to set up across the country. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign.
Honourable Minister, kindly take a sip of water while Mr. Speaker takes back the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign dubbed Experience Ghana, Share Ghana was intensified across the country by government. Our goal is to complement this campaign. The Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, which was redeveloped and modernized to support from the World Bank and other development partners, was commissioned by President Akufo-Addo on 4 July 2023. The redeveloped park will boost domestic and heritage tourism and is expected, Mr. Speaker, to attract over 1 million tourists annually. Government will continue with the redevelopment of Aburi Botanical Gardens, Salaga and Picora slavery camps, and Yasantua Mausoleum to boost domestic tourism. Furthermore, in partnership with the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board, efforts will continue to renovate selected ports, castles, and museums across the country. Mr. Speaker, government will work closely with the private sector to improve key tourist sites and events as part of the Beyond the Year of Return initiative. We have made considerable progress towards achieving 1.2 million visitors for 2023, with 150,000 jobs along the value chain, and 2 million foreign visitors, and 1.5 million in the domestic tourism by 2025. Mr. Speaker, to improve mobility and accessibility, as well as safety along major trunk roads, the following projects are at various stages of completion. Work on 31.2 kilometers Asim-Fosu-Asim-Praso portion of the National Trunk Road N8 was completed and commissioned in June 2023. Accra-Tema Beach Road, Lot 1 and Lot 2, 79 and 89% complete respectively. Construction of a 3-tier interchange at Nongua Barrier is ongoing. Development works on the Kumasi Lake Road and Drainage Extension Project 98% complete. Selected roads in Sekondi and Takoradi Phase 1 is a fifth of the way complete. Tema Flower Road is 30%. In Samao Franco, 26%. Reconstruction of Bechimen, Techimentia, Akomadan Road, 64% complete. Reconstruction of Aguna and Kota in Kwanta, Takwa Road, 34% complete. Phase 2 of Obechevili, Lamte Circle Interchange and other ancillary works, 86% complete. Construction of a 4-tier interchange at Swami in the Asanchi region to commence. Construction of 50 prefabricated bridges in all 16 regions and continued in 2023 are 86% complete. Design, fabrication, and delivery of 87 steel panel bridges is ongoing, with 45 bridges delivered. New bridges under construction at Trifu-Praso to separate vehicular traffic from the railway line is 93% complete. Government will embark on a community roads improvement program to increase productivity and facilitate the transportation of food crops. District assemblies will be given complementary equipment to ensure that their local roads are motorable throughout the year. Mr. Speaker, this notwithstanding, government remains committed to improving road infrastructure in line with the fiscal consolidation plan in the IMF-backed PCPEC program and in partnership with the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the road sector's public-private partnership program for the financing, construction, and management of road infrastructure has 2 projects at different stages of preparation. Phase 1 of the Accra-Tema motorway extension project, 31.7 kilometers, involves the reconstruction of the motorway. The concession agreement and draft engineering, procurement, and construction agreement have been finalized and will be laid in this House. The development of Tema arterial roads will be structured on a PPP basis using the build, operate, and transfer model. The appraisal of the project is ongoing. Mr. Speaker, civil works on Phase 1 of the Anomabo Fisheries College project is complete, and enrollment and training of students will commence by end of the year. As part of efforts to prevent diversion and hoarding of premixed fuel, which results in acute shortages, 37 out of a target of 50 premixed automated vending machines were installed in various landing beaches at Elmina, Choco, and Nungwa, among others. Government will install the remaining 13 automated vending machines by end of the year at various landing beaches across the country. Government has also piloted the use of electronic monitoring systems on trawlers to help check illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing practices. Mr. Speaker, under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, government continues to embark on strategic investments across our communities nationwide in line with fiscal consolidation plan through the development authorities. Approximately 340 projects have been completed and accordingly handed out to the beneficiary communities. The remaining 297 projects are at different stages of development, of completion. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to take full advantage of AFCFTA, government has established an export trade house in Nairobi, Kenya, to promote made-in-Ghana products and services. We have also undertaken a marketing expansion expedition to Kenya with 63 Ghanaian companies to introduce them to the East African market. Government has also facilitated the issuance of AFCFTA certificates of origin to 51 Ghanaian companies and businesses covering 300 product lines, indicating eligibility to be traded under AFCFTA. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to promoting access to competitive financing for the private sector. Over the course of the past 5 years, government has established and recapitalized critical institutions that are able to provide financial intermediation to the private sector. These institutions include GERSEL, Development Bank of Ghana, Consolidated Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Commodity Exchange, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and the Venture Capital Trust Fund. Mr. Speaker, as the economy recovers, we need to support these critical institutions to deepen their interaction with private sector to spur growth and create more jobs. Government will place emphasis on supporting DBG capital raising to $1 billion mark in the medium term and disbursing about $1 billion Ghana cedis in loans from the current $450 million by end of the year. DBG and GESEL to provide partial credit guarantees that will reduce risk and attract more private sector actors to expand agricultural operations. Operationalizing an equity fund in partnership with other private sector investors to augment existing capital for SMEs by DBG. And supporting GIF to execute commercially sustainable infrastructure construction solutions, including the Agenda 111 hospitals, Accra-Tema Expressway project, and affordable university hostel accommodation. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Nuclear Power Program has made significant policy progress towards the development of Ghana's first nuclear power plant. Government has shortlisted vendor companies and countries to identify the economical and resilient nuclear power technology for Ghana as a source of clean and sustainable energy and other peaceful purposes. Mr. Speaker, total oil production from all the producing assets within Ghana was approximately 18.5 million barrels from January to May 2023. This translates to an average production of 122,000 barrels per day. Total gas exports to the gas processing plant at Atuabo and the onshore receiving facility at Zanzule within the same.
Honourable Minister, just a minute. Just a minute. Honourable members, having regard to the state of business of the House, I direct that sitting be held outside a prescribed period. I so direct. Minister, you may continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the cash waterfall mechanism and the natural gas clearing have been used to equitably distribute revenues in the sector. Under the updated ESRP, the cash waterfall mechanism is being reformed to ensure mandatory compliance to provide cash flow predictability to key players, IPPs and state energy entities within the energy sector. To address the impact of excess capacity payments on the economy, government has sustained collaborative engagement of IPPs. Currently, IPPs are being engaged to restructure their accrued outstanding balances and eliminate payment shortfalls and arrears accrual in the sector. The gas sales agreement between VRA and NGAS has been renegotiated to reduce the take-or-pay commitment and other financial obligations to the state. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank estimates that climate change could cost Ghana approximately 1.7% of GDP annually by 2030 if left unaddressed. Cognizant of this assessment, government is working to secure carbon financing to support its nationally determined contributions and meet its commitment under the Paris Agreement. This will drive foreign direct green investments to benefit local businesses. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to address loss and damage from climate change, Ghana, as one of the first Pathfinder countries, launched the in-country process for Ghana's participation in the Global Shield Against Climate Risk and the Global Risk Modeling Alliance. These initiatives will enable us to assess quantitatively our climate risk, design solutions informed by the data, and facilitate access to resources from the Global Shield. Mr. Speaker, government in partnership with the Green Climate Fund has established the Ghana Shear Landscape Emission Reduction Project at an estimated cost of $54.5 million. The project will focus on the shear landscape and will address the country's efforts to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Additionally, government is implementing the Ghana Cocoa Forest RED program, which covers 5.9 million hectares, 79% of reserves, 21% on reserves in 7 regions. The program will benefit 12 million urban and rural residents. Ghana has become the second country in Africa after Mozambique to receive RED class payments in January 2023. Under the leadership of the President, Mr. Speaker, we are transforming the Climate Vulnerable Forum and V20 into permanent intergovernmental organizations. The aim is to champion principally a fair share agenda to ensure appropriate financing for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, whilst leveraging our natural resources to raise carbon financing for accelerated climate action and to ensure that the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature threshold is not breached. The President, Mr. Speaker, currently chairs the Climate Vulnerable Forum, while the Finance Minister chairs the V20 Group of Finance Ministers. This is an organization of 58 countries with a population of 1.5 billion people in the most affected regions of the world. Mr. Speaker, government continues to sustain social protection programs to protect the poor and the vulnerable. The half-year performance of the identified programs are provided below. Under the LEAP program, government disbursed a total of 169.95 million as of June 2023 to 346,000 households comprising 1.5 million individuals. This includes the increase of the monthly grant to beneficial households from 32 cedis to 64 cedis for one-member household and 38 cedis to 76 for two-member households. Our target under this program period is to reach about 8% of the population, i.e. 2.5 million people. Under the Ghana School Feeding Program, coverage increased considerably from the 1.67 million beneficiaries in 2016 to 3.8 million beneficiaries by 2023. The feeding grants cost per meal, per child, per day increased from 1 cedi to 120 cedis, 1 cedi 20 pesos for the 2023 academic year. We have also settled all arrears owed to caterers under the program for the second and third terms of the 2022 academic year and the first term of the 2023 academic year. The capitation grant contributed to increased enrollment in public basic schools from 6,048,897 pupils for the 2021-2022 academic year to 6,114,302 pupils for the 2022-2023 academic year. Under the free senior high school, technical and vocational education and training free TVET programs, a total of 447,396 first year students enrolled during the 2022-2023 academic year to bring the total number of free senior high school TVET beneficiaries to 1,318,035 students. Government continued with the construction of 9 state-of-the-art TVET centers to offer modern facilities and equipment, enable effective skills training, and empower young people with the relevant skills required for employment and entrepreneurship. Under complementary education for underprivileged groups, including out-of-school children, government commenced the implementation of Cycle 8 of the Complementary Basic Education Program in February 2023 with a total enrollment of 5,000 learners as at end 2023. Mr. Speaker, the PCPEG government program is implementing with the support of the IMF ECF facility requires strong fiscal consolidation. This will enable us quickly re-establish macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. These are necessary preconditions for long-term economic growth, job creation, and rapid transformation. A key pillar of the PCPEG is a focus on inclusive growth. Our renewed push for growth is informed by the usual experience that fiscal consolidation tends to have negative impact on growth. For the medium term, we are targeting revised economic growth rates of 1.5%, 2.8%, and 4.7% for 2025. Mr. Speaker, we need to be deliberate and strategic in our actions if we are to exceed our post-COVID-19 strong economic growth, which averaged 7% compared to the 4.5% and 2.6% in lower middle income countries and sub-Saharan Africa. With the economy showing signs of stabilization, government intends to pursue a growth agenda that is fully aligned with the 2028 timeline for returning to a path of debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, given the limited fiscal space as well as our determination not to accumulate new arrears, our growth agenda will be mainly financed from domestic and external private sector investments, as well as a rationalization of ongoing programs. The approach is to prioritize existing programs that are critical for growth and can be implemented to deliver quick results without huge demands on the available budgetary resources. Ultimately, we will aggressively encourage the private sector under the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue framework to promote shared growth anchored on job creation, food security, exports and import substitution. Towards this objective, government expects to finalize a growth strategy in August 2023, an enhanced growth strategy that is. Mr. Speaker, the key elements of the enhanced growth strategy include accelerating, scaling up and aggregation in agriculture and value addition for key staples such as rice, poultry, maize, soya, and tomatoes, supporting industrial parks and economic zones that promote innovation and positive spillovers and efficiency for key sectors such as the automotive, pharmaceutical, technology, textiles, and garment industry, promoting tourism to attract international and domestic tourists to boost incomes and create jobs, deepening the digitalization of public service to promote efficiency in service delivery and protecting the public purse, expanding housing delivery programs to improve access to jobs and accommodation, and deepening financial intermediation programs to enhance inclusion and entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, preparing this 2023 mid-year budget, we have held extensive engagements with Cabinet and with also diverse stakeholders, including organized labor, employer associations, AGI, Ghana Union of Traders, GUTA, Peasant Farmers Association, civil society organizations, Chamber of Mines, think tanks, African Leadership Institute for West Africa, the academia, faith-based organizations, the investor community, Council of State, National Development Planning Commission, chief directors, PPME, directorates of MDAs, chief executive of all metropolitan, municipal, and industrial assemblies, and many, many others. In all of these meetings, as Speaker, stakeholders provided insights into issues such as widening the tax net, SOE governance, expenditure controls, optimizing extractive industry contributions, providing increased and targeted support to agriculture and industry, revamping ports operations and customs duties, as well as growing and changing the structure of the economy. Mr. Speaker, this feedback has been illuminating and well received. The faith-based organization, for example, agreed to form a committee to educate their congregation on their responsibilities to paying taxes. We will continue to engage to find mutually acceptable solutions as we prepare the 2024 budget statement in November 2023. Mr. Speaker, our engagement with the private sector was more about how to manage the economic crisis that befell us. The result is that we are seeing today we have indeed turned the corner. The crisis is behind us. There is greater certainty and predictability in the economy now than was the case previously. Businesses can plan better. The task ahead of us now is how to get businesses to do better. Starting from August and as part of preparations for the 2024 budget, the ministry, together with other relevant sector ministries and agencies, will be hosting a series of strategic engagements with various industries to help us tailor government interventions to their specific needs. There's a big opportunity for us as a country to rebuild our economy, to be more resilient and vibrant than before, and to have the capacity to deliver more for the masses. This is the focus of government now, and with the help of this House and the support of the nation and the guidance of the Almighty, we know we will get there. Mr. Speaker, last Friday, I had a singular privilege to be invited to participate in the joint caucus meetings of Parliament. Indeed, the meeting effectively reflected the theme of the 2023 carbon budget. Mr. Speaker, it was a pleasant and intimate experience. I appreciated the opportunity to engage and receive valuable feedback from the honorable members. I want to thank the leadership of the House for that opportunity and the shared agency which was exhibited to transform our economy. Mr. Speaker, I'll be the first to admit that it has been an extraordinarily difficult year for our country and our citizens. Whilst most countries are still going through difficulties due to what is happening globally, our economic crisis also emanates from fundamental and systemic weaknesses that we must boldly confront. These include our low revenue to GDP ratio, our high demand and dependence on imports, including food products that can easily be produced here, our inefficient power management, lack of robust expenditure and commitment control systems, the numerous statutory funds of expenditure and economic governance, and weak SOE governance. Mr. Speaker, what I have outlined today begins a strong effort on the part of government to address these issues. Most of the structural reforms we propose in the PCPEC, which we secured an IMF program, are geared towards addressing these fundamental issues. In the next 15 months, there will be renewed efforts to undertake the necessary reforms and implement very critical measures. Mr. Speaker, I want to once again acknowledge the sacrifice that our people have made, especially in the rollout of the DDP, and government sincerely appreciate all these sacrifices. We are, Mr. Speaker, a resilient people, but we must be resolute if we are to get our community across the Jordan. On our part, we will ensure that we implement systems to enhance revenue collection through compliance measures to bring public finances back to a sustainable path while growing the real sector of the economy, especially agriculture. Implement the necessary structural reforms to strengthen expenditure commitment control, avoid arrears accumulation, and protect the public purse. Strengthen SOE governance, review statutory funds, and ensure improved alignment of key priorities, address the energy sector challenges, and implement the accelerated community roads improvement phase 2 to expand motorability and improve roads nationwide. Mr. Speaker, while concluding the 2023 budget statement in November 2022 in this House, I did emphasize that our unity in Kabul will be vital in confronting the daunting challenges facing our nation. Mr. Speaker, today I provided updates to demonstrate that we have delivered on these critical areas. We thank fellow Ghanaians and partners for their invaluable support and sacrifices. Our economy is showing signs of stabilization, and we are deeply grateful for the abiding grace of God, which has been more than sufficient to enable us to turn this corner. By being hopeful, speaking the same language of productivity, growth, and working closely together, we are securing our own collective success. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of ongoing fiscal adjustment and sustained investment in our people have contributed immensely to the stabilization we are seeing in the economy. Exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since 2022, and private investments have been announced due to increased investor confidence in our economy. Ordinarily, these positive trends should ease the burden on our pockets. As a finance minister and a family man myself, I'll continue to work hard to build and sustain a favorable macroeconomic environment and remain confident that the prices of goods and services will reflect the trend for all of us, for all our families and enterprises to enjoy. Mr. Speaker, we must all work together. Regulators, market federations, unions, individuals, and play our part to ensure consumers are treated fairly to complete the turnaround. This mid-year fiscal policy review has outlined a strategy for realigning our program to sustain our progress to stability. We have not asked, Mr. Speaker, for additional funding. We have not asked for new tax measures. We have committed to stay within appropriation and be even more efficient in mobilizing resources and managing expenditure. Mr. Speaker, we have indicated that we are focused on structural reforms to address systemic weaknesses and strengthen resilience in key areas, including revenue mobilization, expenditure management, commitment control, and arrears clearance, debt management, financial stability, as well as energy and cocoa sector SOE reformation. Rejuvenating the growth agenda of a prioritized growth strategy which emphasizes private sector-led investment in areas such as agriculture, local manufacturing, tourism, and digital transformation. The phase 2 of the Food for Jobs program, aquaculture, U-Start, Economic Enclaves Project, 1D, 1F, and Tech Hubs will be integral to this growth strategy. We will strengthen the ecosystem of financial services to enhance the catalytic role of Development Bank of Ghana, CBG, GCX, GESEL, Ghana SM, GIF, and Venture Capital Trust Fund. Launching the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue Framework to enhance the ease of doing business and crowd in significant private sector, domestic and foreign investment, first from existing companies and also a global search for new entrants. And also, Mr. Speaker, safeguarding social protection for the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, intermediate results from our collective efforts and our resources, especially our people, indicate that we will indeed succeed. Beyond these current challenges, our economic prospects remain bright, but we must adapt quickly and address unexpected challenges ahead in order to rebuild our resilience. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I'd like to bring our attention to several critical imperatives that require our immediate and collective action. The energy sector, especially IPP power payments, remain a critical challenge. We must support the ECG to significantly improve its collection to reduce the burden the sector imposes on public finances. I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to announce that we have an updated energy sector recovery plan, and we must all support its implementation to bring the sector towards a sustainable path. Mr. Speaker, expenditure control has become more important to ensure that revenue shocks are efficiently managed, even as we address the systemic challenges through technology and capacity development. Government will work with state institutions to improve the sanctions outlined in the PFM Act, especially regarding off-budget commitments by MDAs. Improving non-oil domestic revenue collection cannot be overemphasized. In this vein, it is important to support the GRA to enhance collection and operationalize measures to strengthen revenue administration effort. To achieve ambitious non-oil revenue target in the PCPEC of 20% revenue to GDP, enhanced commitment is required. And completing the domestic debt operation is essential to restore debt sustainability and move forward our engagement with external creditors. Mr. Speaker, this mid-year review offers us an even better opportunity to jointly work towards entrenching stability for our economy. We must seize it, Mr. Speaker. We must claim now a successful first review of the fund in September. Let us continue, Mr. Speaker, to believe in the Ghana we own. Let us have the courage to be proud about what we can and have achieved. Let us be and think positively. Let us act patriotic and stand firm. With hard work, integrity, fraternity, and mutual respect, we will stabilize and transform our economy as well as build a righteous nation, one of peace, prosperity, and freedom today and into the future. As 1 Peter 1:10 exhorts us, let us use whatever gifts we have received to serve Ghana. As faithful stewards of God's grace, let us indeed be perfectly united in mind and thought and build this great republic as in Philippians 4:8. Mr. Speaker, we are all, including myself, Mr. Speaker, including myself, have indeed been battered and bruised and broken in this past year, but we as a country held our resolve. As a resilient nation, the battle has indeed always been the Lord's. As we sit today, let us use this moment to glorify him, for he has, Mr. Speaker, rescued us. We have seen that he has recovered and restored some of our losses, and he has revived our economy. Mr. Speaker, We need to rejoice in fervent gratitude to the Lord. We must endeavor to continue to build this righteous republic, united in our resolve to transform our economy, for in speaking one language, and nothing will be impossible for us to achieve our manifest destiny of Ghana for greatness. Mr. Speaker, let me once again express my profound appreciation to this House and to all fellow Ghanaians for the support and cooperation towards stabilizing the economy. Let me assure you that the nation, under the steady hands of President Akufo-Addo, will pilot this ship of state, safety and growth. Right Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to present the Media Fiscal Review Statement to this House, and I beg indeed to submit. May God continue to bless our homeland Ghana, make her great and strong. In Kunim Yeyenya Dia. Victory is ours for all of us together indeed. God bless our homeland Ghana and make it great and strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I so submit.
Honorable members, guided by the statement, particularly the business statement for the week, comments on the media review of the budget statement and economic policy of the government of Ghana for this year will commence tomorrow, Tuesday, 1st August 2023. I'm informed the intention is for members to use 2 days, tomorrow and tomorrow next, to make comments on the media review. If leadership are minded to say something or to guide me further, please let me know. Yes, Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to guide you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have listened to our Minister responsible for finance. Mr. Speaker, I listened to him attentively, and I've also had the opportunity to review the papers, the document that he gave to us. Mr. Speaker, he said that the performance so far shows that we have turned the corner. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the evidence and the numbers before us shows that he has rather deepened our woes. Mr. Speaker, I say this because he has said to us today that he is revising economic growth from 2.8% of GDP to 1.5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, again, he said to us here and now that he has borrowed 5.5 billion Ghana cedis from January to June from the T-bill market. Mr. Speaker, not long ago, this same minister had informed us that he will not borrow at all in the year 2023, and that going into the remaining part of the year, he is going to borrow another 41 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, aside that, the cedi depreciation we are seeing so far is largely because he has defaulted in the payment of external interest and principal. Mr. Speaker, that is why the cedi has...
Honorable Leader, I think we will just have to... Leader, I think you are ready to fire on, so we can just start the comments now. We can start the comment now. Leadership, is that what the decision is?
Mr. Speaker, I'm only laying foundation. I'm only laying the foundation for the debate to start tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I will move for the suspension of the House. But in doing so, let our minister not say this anywhere, that he has turned the corner. He has rather deepened our woes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I take it that the motion has been moved. Any seconder? Well, that's the motion. I want to listen to leadership before I come to the minister. Minister, let me listen to Majority Leader. Yes.
The minister needed to table the presentation. That is what he just did.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying, after the presentation, the minister needed to table what presentation that he had done to the House, and which is what he just did. Mr. Speaker,
he needed to do what?
Table the paper.
Table the statement.
The statement that he delivered after the event. He needed to leave the House with a copy. So he needed to lay it, which is what he just did. That's the point. The Speaker, I guess you educate.
Now you are introducing complications. If you are going to lay, is laying it as a paper, as what? Because it's a statement. And he did state that it was a statement in the terms of the Public Financial Management Act. Now, in that situation, do we lay it? Do we table it? If you lay it and you table it, what are the implications? Well, usually statements, we don't lay statements, we don't table them.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very important statement on which we are going to comment. You cannot say that after he has read it, he should put it under his armpit and leave this house. With the greatest respect. He leaves a copy with us for purposes of reference. Mr. Speaker, that is what it is. And that is why I'm saying that after he finished, the next thing was for him to have just presented the paper to us. Mr. Speaker, that's all that I said.
Yes, I heard you, but you know that he did state clearly and call on the Hansard office to capture the entirety of the statement. That becomes public document. And I'm just looking at our practice so that we don't complicate matters. Yes, I see you itching to say something.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though in the beginning he called on the Hansard office to capture it, where did they go for the records to capture? If he doesn't lay it, there's really no basis for what they are going to capture. Because if you read a copy which some leaders got, it is obvious that he skipped some details. And so he needs to lay what is the original document that he was reading, but skipped some portions and left some details so that the Hansard office can capture the entire of it. So I do believe that even though it is a statement, that in this instance, he should actually lay the entire document so that it will be part of the records.
I understand the import of that. I'm looking at our practice and procedure. That's what I'm looking at. If it comes under Order 70, it's clear. If it is under Order 74, 75, then we know what to do. You know, those things are stated there. So I don't want people to leave here a bit confused about what next to be done. You want to clarify it? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though you ruled on the fact that this is a statement, I'm just going back to it, given the reference that is going to lay it, and the question of whether it should be laid or not has risen. Mr. Speaker, I also heard you say we would debate it from tomorrow. We'll make comments. Oh, comments, not debate. Mr. Speaker, I suppose that laying it might not be necessary at all, because when statements are made, and we make comments, I have not seen one statement being made and then it's laid. It is a statement is made and then we comment on it. Nobody lays a statement. That's my thinking.
Well, yes, it's deficiency, but we'll correct it. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, this is a statement and government policy. I thought my honorable colleague and friend, who's been in this house for quite a while, will rather lead us onto the path of righteousness. Mr. Speaker, whenever reviews are made which do not include supplementary budgets, they are laid on the table for us. The Speaker, as my colleague from Koku Central has indicated, it is not possible with such documents to read the entirety of the document. Certainly you may skip some. And if you don't even leave it, assume you even read everything, the Hansard department may not be able to capture everything. For purposes of doubly checking, assume you even read everything, it's important that we have a copy with us to serve as a benchmark. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see why we should be litigating this matter. It's by convention and practice. That is what we've been doing, with the greatest respect. But having said so, Mr. Speaker, you asked for an indication. And my colleague, the minority leader, who at the very outset was indulging the finance minister to move a motion outside what is required to be done by the minister, now wants to begin his own debate. Again, outside the arrangement that we have made in this house. He was part of the business committee that agreed that we will stand the debate down, even though it's a statement, for at least 24 hours. For at least 24 hours. And he's trying to construct a very wobbly foundation. We'll not go into that. Mr. Speaker, the indication to you, as you sought, is that we take a suspension for now. And as we agreed last Friday, maybe for about 30 minutes, and come back to continue with the business of the day. Mr. Speaker, so if he moves a motion, I'm not too sure that he moved a motion because the time is past 2 o'clock. So we just wanted an indication from us. So I want to support the indication that eventually he gave, even though he was on the wrong course at the very outset. Mr. Speaker, the second stage of his submission is what I'm supporting. We take a suspension for 30 minutes and come back. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Please respond. Honorable members. Yes. Honorable Cletus Avoka.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think that we should distinguish between the statement that members make on the floor of this House and this mid-year fiscal policy review statement. That being so, this is a very, very official statement in respect of the government's economic policy for the mid-year. I think that for the avoidance of doubt, it will be prudent for us to lay it, so that it will be prudent for us to lay the statement read by the minister, so that members can officially access it and then contribute to the debate. I will prefer that than, not today, I'm not saying today, yes, but I'm raising the issue, I'm contributing to the issue of whether it should be late or not, and not the other way. So I will prevail upon you, Mr. Speaker, to lay the document, and then it will be assessed by this House so that we can do the debate, rather than treat it like any other ordinary statement that has passed through this House. Thank you.
Honourable Member, a very senior member of this House, you are aware that mid-year reviews used to be moved as motions and debated. That used to be the practice. They used to be moved as motions and debated by the House. 2016, you passed a new law, Public Financial Management Act, which changed the practice, and they are now presented as statements. Now, if you present it as a statement, it comes under Order 72. If you want to lay it, then you have to present it as a paper, and that comes under Order 75. So the procedures are different. And procedure for laying is that sufficient copies should have been submitted to the office of the clerk. On receipt of sufficient copies, the clerk will indicate that it be captured on the order paper. This is what is stated there. And it will have to be laid as papers for presentation, that is at the commencement of public business. But this one came under private business, which is what? Members, including ministers, statements, and that is under Order 72. That is why I said you need to clarify the situation. We are masters of our own rules, and so we are not bound to follow what we have. But definitely there should be some clarity. We should state a good precedent set, and then we can follow it tomorrow. Not to keep on changing whatever we do on this floor. That is why I raise it. Now, the sense of the House is that because of the importance attached to the statement, it should be laid and copies made available to all members, including the office of the General. And so I direct that the Minister for Finance should lay the paper, and then copies will be made available to all members, including the office of the Generals. So, Honourable Minister for Finance, we take it that you have accordingly laid the statement, and copies will be made available to all members. Now, the motion was moved for us to suspend sitting and then come back. So before we do that, I want to, on behalf of all members, thank the Minister for coming to the House, appearing before us, and presenting the mid-year review for the budget and economic policy of government for the 2023 financial year. I should suspend sitting for how long?
Mr. Speaker, I propose 30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Actually, the motion was for suspension. He didn't move for adjournment. He moved for suspension. You mentioned adjournment. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the agreement was for us to suspend for 30 minutes and for members to be able to ask the ministers some questions that have already been advertised.
So we suspend for 30
Only
minutes.
30 minutes, and then we'll come back. No, members have questions. Ministers. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Sitting is accordingly suspended for 30 minutes. We want all of you to be back here within 30 minutes for other matters to be considered. There's extended sitting today. We did direct last week that there will be extended sitting from today, and provision for everything is made available. Everything, yes. Honorable members, the House and sitting is accordingly suspended.
So it's been a long day, trust me. We're just returning from the Parliament House where the Finance Minister has presented the mid-year budget review. He stated quite a number of things. He's detailed to us where we moved from and where we find ourselves and where we'll be heading to at least till the end of the year 2023. But most importantly, the key question remains, will there be any respite for the ordinary Ghanaian citizen until the end of the year 2023? My guests are still with me. Martin Ohini Enim is a chartered economist. He's here, and also Dr. Amoba for senior lecturer at Pentecost University, as well as Dr. Felix Nyako. He is joining us via Zoom as well. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Yes.
It has been quite a long day, and we listened to Ken Ofori-Atta. Before I get to you to have your bite on all that he has said, let me just go through a few of the key highlights or the points he stated. Now, he mentioned that 2022 was the most difficult year. So I'm quoting, 2022 was the most difficult year for me as Ghana's finance minister. On July 1st, 2022, we took what was then a very difficult but necessary decision to request support from the IMF to implement our post-COVID-19 program of economic growth. The country was going through a dire period of economic uncertainties and despondency. So